Well, hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Passions Project. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Julie and Alfie. And I've not told them this yet, actually, but my cousin's son is called Alfie and my sister's called Julie. So straight away, there's something in there. So without further ado, because you don't want to listen to my babbling on, without further ado, I'm now going to ask Julie, what's your passion and who are you and what you're about?
Okay, so my passion is dogs and dog training, dog behaviour, anything dogs. I've been a trainer now for, many years. My dad was a dog trainer. We've always had German Shepherds when we were growing up. And when the children, my son Alfie, his brother and his sister, Charlie and Isabel, grew up, I was lucky enough to have my first German Shepherd, Jessie, who came to us, and I thought, oh, it's fine, my dad's a dog trainer, but my sister and I, we only ever played with the dogs. And it was a lot harder than I ever thought it would be. She hit her adolescent stage and become an extremely reactive German Shepherd. Didn't know what on earth I'd done wrong. Contacted a dog trainer called Nigel Marshall, whose business was Kent Dog Training. He came out to see me, and I went to his dog training class with Jessie when she was a puppy, and really just fell in love with the industry. Had German Shepherds afterwards. I had Alfie had his dog Yoda.
Little Jack Russell.
My dog Dolly behind us, my little Jack. I had Arthur, and it sort of went from there, really. Trained with Nigel, prestigious dog trainer, Nigel Marshall, who we still work with as well as our own business.
He's now under Dog Trainer UK.
Yes. And then Alfie was always the one that helped me the most with the dogs. Charlie, not so much. And Isabel, my daughter, not so much. But Alfie was always really interested. And then I retrained completely. I was worked in a preschool at the time. I was a Senko, so I worked with special needs children. And just fell in love with the industry. Saw such a huge improvement in Jessie, and completely her behaviour changed so much, and thought, I like this, I can do it. So
you were sold. So, I mean, obviously that's a great example, actually. What, I was talking to you before we came on air about people's passions and how we're doing this kind of continual research. And I think that's a good example of where, one of your kids, in inverted commas, one of your kids is kind of up for it, wants it, interested, passionate about it. And then the other two that I'm assuming kind of had a similar upbringing aside Alfie, it weren't kind of getting it to the same degree. Yeah. So why do you think you got it, Alfie? Why do you think you got the bug? Did your mum threaten you? Or was it,
I think it's an inherited gene. I don't know, really. I think a lot of it, there's a kind of bit more intuitive understanding, and it can be learned. That's part of our job, is teaching people to be able to read their dogs, and a lot of it just comes from the bond and the love and the experience that you have. Being able to read that look they give you and knowing where that's coming from. But it was, I always found the challenge fun. I found it when we'd be going out and we were doing the training with Jessie from that early stage. How old was I when we had Jessie then?
Gosh,
you been about 13, 14, something like that.
Even younger. And
I've never been much of a big guy, so controlling a big German Shepherd like that and the power that they have. What I found really interesting about it was, although there's a process, a step-by-step process in the way you train, you build that relationship, most of controlling a dog is the specific relationship you have with that animal. And that's about the time spent. It's about enjoying that engagement, the play, and understanding how a dog thinks about it in that moment. They think about it as the pack. And so when you're on the other end of the lead, so much about controlling a dog is just doing things together, and they see that relationship as teamwork. And so I enjoyed the challenge when she'd react, and I when you behave in that way with a dog, you see how much their anxiety reduces, and a lot of reactivity comes from that stress or that anxiety, whether that's a genetic imperative, being a guardian breed with a German Shepherd, or whether it's trauma based, if they've had previous experiences that made them scared. The real joy of it is seeing them relax and coming back into the world, and that joy, and you experience that joy. And it's obviously they don't speak English, but there is a way where you can it's almost like a telepathic link, and you can experience that joy of being connected to another animal that a lot of people take for granted. They just think, oh, just get a dog, feed it, it'll be fine. But they forget they're like a little being in your life. They might have fallen in, but they can speak in their own way. And I just fell in love with that. I loved animals in that sort of way, and having that one-to-one basis with a family dog and then my own dog. I just picked it up, really. I've always been brought up with it with granddad and my mum, and it was just something I just fell into as part of the process.
Well, it's almost like Noah's Ark at the Passions channel, because as I mentioned earlier, we've had rhino people, we've had cats, we've had cheetahs, we've had gorillas. One person was really passionate about something called a fishing cat. Not just a cat, a fishing cat.
Wow.
So we've got all sorts. Do you know what I think I'd like to ask you now? Because as people who watch these shows know that I don't kind of have a conversation with you beforehand. And one of the things that, just thinking about what you're saying there, Alfie, is obviously, as we record this at the moment, there's been a fair bit of media coverage about some dog attacks and that, which is very relevant, and you folks must see that and must be have a view on that.
Yeah.
What I know that's a massive question. What's your view on that? But how much of that is about owners? I mean, I guess you can't blame the dog. Is it about the owners? Perhaps, Julie, you could start with that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been in the media everywhere, and it's absolutely terrifying. I think a lot of it is poor communication between owner and dog, misreading, very clear signs to us, but for owners not so much, between owner and dog. I think genetics comes into it. A huge part of it is genetics. If you've got mum, dad, or further along down the line that are fearful, and then those dogs are bred together, it's more than likely gonna come out in the puppies. And then these puppies are given to inexperienced dog owners, first-time dog owners, where particularly when we get to our large guardian breeds, our beautiful bully breeds, etc., they're a lot to handle, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can very, very, very quickly get into trouble. And if you don't know how to read the signs and treat them as the amazing dogs that they are, and you treat them as your babies, as teddy bears, you can get yourself in a big pickle very, very quickly. Because
the most common thing you see when it's in the media, and naturally media being the media, it can be quite sensationalized because they want to get the views and the reads, but it's always framed in a way of it came out of nowhere, completely unexpected. And at the end of the day, it's not unexpected, because what you're doing is you're bringing a predator into your home. Now, when that predator looks really cute and curly hair and everything, it could be people forget to realize that fact, but there's nothing inherently scary about the fact that they're a predator. It's just something you have to reference, and that's just the way, the inherent part of their dog psychology. And so a lot of these attacks that you see, it gets almost framed into, this is like the act of a monster, and it gets kind of over sensationalized. In actuality, a lot of these things, these reactions end up just being a dog being a dog. When you look at the way they behave in the wild, what we consider challenging behavior, like reactivity leading into aggressive reactivity, or resource guarding, which is, I hazard a guess, is a lot of the causes of these attacks when you look at babies and things like that,
or trauma,
exactly, is just a dog being a dog. And so it's very easy it's not unexpected at all, because if you don't put in the fail safes and the process to teach a dog how to behave in the human world, then of course you're going to have a dog that behaves like a wild animal in your home if you allow them to behave that way. And that's what a lot of the theory that underpins dog training is referencing their natural psychology and genetic imperatives. And the easy way to understand that is look in the way they behave in the wild. Look at street packs, street dogs. And so you emulate those processes, those environments that they tend to grow up in. And by environment, I mean the pack's environment, the way they behave as a unit. And you just emulate that in your home. It's very easy to understand. But you are then held back or capped by a dog's experience. So if you've got a rescue that's gone through trauma, which I'm dealing with at the moment with my Jack Russell, or bad breeding, which is mum's references, they're more likely to lean towards those naturalistic behaviours, which we consider aggressive.
And like I say, misreading those early warning signs, you know, when dogs, not all dogs like to be hugged, and you're stiff and they're lip licking, and, you know, owners want to kiss them, but they're uncomfortable. Instagram's full of it, you know, you know, these dogs that are, like I say, lip licking, their eyes are, we call it a whale eye. And the dog will then aggress, and it's giving you so many signs that I don't want this, I'm uncomfortable, etc., etc. And as well, teaching, I'm in this situation at the moment. My granddaughter Rini is 9 months, and we teach her how to behave around our dogs, and our dogs how to behave around her as well. And it's about giving each other space and respecting each other's space as well. Is incredibly important.
So is it fair to assume then that, let's say I'm going to take a breed off the top of my head, like say a cockapoo. Is it quite reasonable to assume that one cockapoo, you know, they're both cockapoos, but one's particularly aggressive and off its head, you pardon the expression, and another is quite placid and easygoing? Is that quite feasible to happen, even though they're the same breed?
Absolutely. Perfect example. At the moment, my sister has just got a cockapoo, Ottilie. She's 9 weeks old, and she was bred from Nigel, from one of his stud dogs, Reddington, and he breeds for therapy dogs. So they are incredibly well bred, very thoughtfully bred, incredible temperament, and she's doing so well. And Ottilie is already showing signs of really being an incredible little dog. Many clients that I visit have bought cockapoos from Gumtree, etc., where two people have just put two dogs together. The biggest problem I see in that breed is resource guarding. And again, because they are so gorgeous, because they are like teddy bears, people treat them as such, but they're not. They're dogs.
And the problem, especially with that breed, is you've got the cocker side of it is that they're super driving. You know, they might not be a working line cocker, but they inherently, as the breed was to work. And then poodles are super intelligent. And if you put a driving dog and an intelligent dog together, the dog that's left requires a lot of stimulation and a lot of boundaries for them to respect their pack.
And you have to meet these dogs' needs. You have to meet the breed specific needs. And if you don't, you're going to end up with a very frustrated little dog. And
we see it most, obviously doing this for a few years now, is we call them fashionable breeds. So when I first started, it was Frenchies was really common. Most of my jobs are Frenchies, and it would be puppies to set them up for success, or when it's gone wrong, when they're a teenager and they're pushing the boundaries a bit. Then it was cockapoos for a long while, and then more recently it's miniature dachshunds, or your kind of wide head dachshunds and things like that.
Or the other end of the spectrum, the XL bullies. They're a massive one.
And so because they're fashionable, their price goes up for the to buy a puppy. So people see all money making scheme, and they don't do the due diligence of looking through that line. So they just put any two dogs together, and there's been a lot of jobs that we do where we say that the way that we're going to put this training process going forward is going to allow you to see how much this dog is malleable to be trained in this situation. But there are times where you are capped at the genetic breeding. That dog will be inherently nervous, so you can't cure the problem, you can only manage it. Now when you do a process like that we do every day with clients, that management is usually a lot of time can be quite simple. You just got to be ready to do a leave it command, for example. There'll never be a dog that you can't not say leave it to. You'll always have to be ready to control it, but it's quite an easy manageable system. But that's a spectrum, and there are varying degrees of that. And there are a lot of dogs out there that are really damaged internally from that faulty breeding. And there's not, we're behavioral experts, but when you're capped from a genetic profile, biological reason, then it's a really hard issue to approach with people. And there's a lot of well-meaning people, they don't know any different. It's green, they're green to this scenario, they're green to these processes, and so they see a good deal, or they see there's something that they've always done before. Because generally, although we tend to see the worst side of dog behavior, generally out there most dogs are fantastically behaved, and you don't need to do the level of behavioral control that we end up instigating with the dogs that we see, because they're just very biddable dogs. But the ones we see every day is, if you don't put these boundaries in place, they just they take that and run, and that's where you get your problems, your challenging behaviours. And like I said before, that's not a problem, it's just a dog being a dog.
That makes absolute sense. I mean, so as a business, do you have to, is there a double edged, if you like, to the business, in that you have to first of all convince people to do dog training in the first place, and then obviously convince them that you're the right people to use for the dog training? Sometimes you know, you're in a business where like, I don't know, accountancy, you don't necessarily have to convince somebody that they need an accountant, because most small businesses, all the messages are very clear that you should have some kind of accountancy. But you're going to sell the concept, aren't you, before you even say use us? Is that the case? Is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generally we have people that come to us where something has just happened, a dog has just aggressed, or, you know, a lovely job where they've just got a puppy and they just want to be set on the right path. Lovely. But generally it's where somebody, you know, it's not understanding the behaviours that the dogs are throwing at them, or, like I say, something has just happened, it's just bitten someone, or it's just run, or your run of the mill pulling on the lead, recall, etc. So I've had lots of people that when they first ring me, I've had to say to them, take a deep breath, because they're crying, you know, have a drink of water, we can go through this together. And I think once they realise that I'm not there to judge, I'm not there to judge anyone, who am I to judge anyone? I'm going to come to your home for a home visit, I'm not going to judge you, let's sort this out, let's start putting measures in place where we can get you back on the right track.
Because the best education you end up having in this world is through experience. The best qualification you can have is experience, and that's something that comes quickly apparent with new dog owners, because their ideas of owning a dog is very different to the reality, especially when it goes wrong. But you're right, it's hard to reach people before it goes wrong, because there's so much things you can do to prevent that, and ultimately we do our job, especially with puppies, so you don't need a dog trainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can do it yourself.
Absolutely.
But it kind of works kind of maybe reverse as other businesses, because when we do go into that and help them with this process and they get the results that they want from it, and a more stress-free environment with that dog falling into place in your life, they're also then the best advertisers for that, because you know this process experientially, and so then when people in their circle start getting dogs and things like that, they can be an advocate for this process. And so a lot of the time it's not trying to persuade people to do the job, it's doing the job well enough for them to then advocate for us, and that's that kind of networking as it grows out through word of mouth and things like that. And because the biggest problem we face, I would say, is technically it's complacency, but what it really is people not having the experience yet to know any different. And so it's the things, oh, that's fine, or that's cute, or don't worry about it, or no, he's a bit nippy now and again, but he's all right. But not being able to see how that behavior where your dog's presenting now is part of the spectrum, and if we don't do something, it will progress. So it's okay to be excused at this point, but if you don't do anything, it will get to this point, and then you can't have that excuse anymore. So most of this is about setting them up for success is the simplest way of putting it.
And that's the thing, I think we always go into people's homes. We're very privileged to be asked to go into people's homes, and that's not taken lightly ever. And we want to set our dogs up for success, but equally our clients up for success as well. And we're very, very lucky. We have lots and lots of clients that keep in touch with us. So those tiny little puppies that we see, they keep in touch. For instance, Spencer and Mandy invited us back to Barnum's first birthday party, which was just lovely. From that tiny little puppy to an 11 stone St Bernard was just amazing. So we're very, very lucky in that respect.
Yeah, and so much of this job, you know, people think of this job as, you know, meeting dogs all the time and playing with dogs and things like that. But ultimately, although we're dog trainers and behaviourists, we're people trainers. And most of this job is not actually the skill of training dogs, because I always say with all my clients, it's simple to be able to train a dog. The processes are very simple. What makes training hard is it's your repetition. You've got to be able to do this every single day, and your consistency. But most of this
and
job,
it's putting the work in, isn't it? Come rain, shine, snow.
But most of this job is being able to read people and being able to understand they're, you know, we're privileged enough to be let them into our into their homes, and then being able to explain these things that on the surface seem maybe quite complex theories and complex practices, but in the moment being able to see if we're losing the client, maybe the explanation isn't suiting the way that they think, and so it's being able to on the spot come up with analogies and metaphors to be able to get that point across. And when you have that moment where they go, oh, I see, it's like this, and they show me like this, I'm like, yeah, exactly. And so it's exploring, it's the people that we're training really to give them the tools they need to then continue this training on.
And dog training is not one size fits all. I like to train the dog that I have in front of me and leave the client with the confidence to move forward after that. And we provide aftercare as well. So for the life of the dog, if there's any problems, anything at all, they call me, email me, text me, and we troubleshoot together.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I hear that word lucky a lot, you know. Julie, you used it just a few moments ago. We're lucky enough, but the truth is that you've earned that. You've put the work and the effort into building enough trust that they're happy for you to go in the home.
Yes,
and I know it's kind of just it's just an off the cuff remark, but it's interesting how many people talk about I was just lucky. But you know, the truth is you're not just lucky. Luck comes into it to a point. So some people, when they start earning a living out of their passions, sometimes they fall out of love with the passion because it gets too hard or whatever. I'm not seeing any kind of issue around that. Are you still as enthusiastic and passionate about doing it now? A silly question. I've just seen it. But have you still got that passion now, even though you're doing it for a living?
Without a doubt, absolutely. It's such an incredible way to, one, make a living, obviously, and two, I'm very lucky, and I'm very aware that my job is my passion. Absolutely. So every day I go into different people's homes, and you know, sometimes when the sun is shining, it's even better, and you're out in a field and you know, they haven't been able to, for instance, say recall their dog ever, and you've got that recall going, and you can see the light bulb moment going off in the people's eyes is wonderful. Absolutely. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes when you come back and you're covered in mud and you're soaking wet and you need to get straight in a hot bath, but it's still there. I'm very, very lucky.
I think the thing that's always managed to kind of keep that passion going is just the daily sort of rewards that you get out of it. I mean, being able to go into a situation which, you know, we've seen some quite desperate situations and serious situations when it comes to the size of dogs and their strengths and the children in the house and things like that. But going into a moment, especially most of the clients we see are a bit like deer in headlights, and they're like, we know something's going on, but we don't know what's going on. Help us, help us, help us. So there's quite a lot of stress level in there. And then we go into that home and start working with the dog. And a lot of the things we explain is about increasing your communication, you know, being able to read your dog and to communicate in a way that your dog easily understands. And when we start doing that practically, and a dog that has previously never listened to their owner is suddenly doing it first time with us, is a signifier of that communication. So if we increase your communication, you can have just as much control as we have in this moment. And then being able to leave after those 2 hours with revitalizing their energy and their passion for this process is reward within itself. And that's what we always go back for, is that you know, obviously we're there for the client and ultimately there for the dog to reduce their stresses in their life, but you know, from a personal point of view, there's a real life satisfaction that comes out of that, to know that I've been integral somewhere in this world. I've been an integral part, and I've made that little part of the world better for the experience that I've been lucky to gain from.
It's a very cool thing to do.
You're making a difference, aren't you? And I think anybody that makes a difference in their career at any point, it's always a more gratifying experience. Did you, obviously there was a lot written, and I've read various things about lockdown animals, lockdown pets, as in we've got nothing else to do, so the kids are driving us all crazy, so we better get a dog. Is that a thing, is the first one? And has that created some relative mayhem in your world?
Yes,
absolutely.
2 questions in one.
Biggest one is separation anxiety. Because we were all in lockdown. We obviously were at home 24/7 with our dogs, and so lots of people that bought puppies in lockdown, they were never left, and equally they didn't have that experience of people coming to their homes, family, friends, etc. So when we were finally allowed out, we had one dog that had never been left before, and separation anxiety is very, very much an emotional issue where the dog goes into complete panic because their pack isn't there anymore, and it's terrifying for the dogs, and it's very, very distressing for owners as well. But equally, having other people come into your home, friends, family, these dogs had never seen it, and again they just did not know. So after the first wave, we were seeing lots and lots of resource guarding, and then lots of those puppies and then become teenagers in the second wave. So not only did you have this panicked behavior, you also had an adolescent puppy as well, which even the best trained puppy can throw some curveballs in adolescence. Absolutely. So you almost had a double whammy. So it was very much a thing.
And the kind of double-edged sword with that time was, on paper, it was a fantastic time to get a dog because you're home all the time. So you've got so much time to invest in that dog and get that training going in that process. But obviously the stresses that came with the lockdown was basically all the behaviors that we see, which was the biggest one, separation anxiety. The core of it was under socialized dogs. They just hadn't had the experience of being outside enough, being around people, being around dogs, having guests, like Mum was saying, coming in and out of the home. And so we were getting jobs come in that was separation anxiety or pulling on the lead. It was the first time in a year and a half that they'd been out the house on a lead. So we get the symptoms, but really what we talk about when we meet clients is we teach them a concept, and that concept is about the way dog behavior develops from their experience and from their environment. And so really what we're doing is if we reference that concept, that core behavior, you alleviate a lot of the stresses that then be separation anxiety and pulling. So that's the difference between dog behavior and dog training. And the biggest thing, on lockdown, which is that we saw at the time, the lockdown pups and things like that, there was a lot of online trainers that were referencing all these sort of things and the best way to get through that. And so much online information is about dog training, which is your simple processes, treat, work, exposure. But if you don't reference the dog behavior, which is the emotional issue of the dog, then it doesn't matter how much you do that dog training. And that's where a lot of clients come to us, is that we've read so much, we've done so much, but nothing seems to be sticking.
And there's so much conflicting information. Well, so much conflicting information.
And what's hard is that information doesn't necessarily mean one's right or one's wrong. It just means that different processes and behaviors is right for different dogs. And so the ability to have someone to come into your home and assess your dog and understand all the different ways that can fit in with the dog you've got is really important. But yeah, that lockdown, it was happening at least for up to a year afterwards.
Yeah,
because either people were either getting puppies in lockdown or rescued older dogs. And so through that process of that 2 year of lockdown, we're then getting, like Mum was saying, teenage dogs. And when you have under socialized dogs going through those really important development stages, it ingrains these behaviors. It doesn't make the training any more complicated. It just means that imperative to unpick that ingrained behavior is more important. And so it just means it probably takes a bit longer of repetition.
Because a lot of the theories are very similar, absolutely. But like I say, it's about training the dog you have in front of you. So what might work for one will not work for another. And as well, it's about fitting all of this in within your very busy family life as well. I don't leave clients with hours and hours of homework to do. I always say fit it in around your everyday life, because that's going to get you the most success. That's going to get you a happy, contented dog at the end of the day.
Because we're ultimately the reason you socialize a dog, you train a puppy, is to make that dog fit your lifestyle. If you try and upend your life to meet the needs of the dog, not even meet the needs in the training mode, but managing an issue rather than solving an issue, that's where the biggest stresses come in. We end up finding funny little routines just to make the dog not bark, just to make sure that the dog doesn't chew up the house, or all these destructive behaviors, when really what we do need to do is solve the root cause. An analogy I always use when I'm training, when people do these sort of things, is if you've got a puppy that is mouthing, very common, it's usually the first problem people face with a new dog. A solution could be to muzzle the dog. You will stop the mouthing, but it doesn't teach the puppy not to mouth, it just manages the issue. And a lot of the things that you end up seeing online with well-meaning people are management solutions, and it's not the core of the issue. So that's why we always say we teach a concept, and that concept is dog behavior, the way that dogs will see the world. We need to reference the training side of the dog, which is your classical conditioning. Do this right, you get a treat. But underneath all of that is emotions. They're a being. You're not a robot that you just plug in.
And they're a baby at the end of the day. We need to teach them, how to behave within the family as a member of your family. Because let's face it, our dogs are a member of our family.
The biggest mistakes we make with our dogs is because we love them so much.
Absolutely.
Always the bait.
Yeah. Do you know, I think that's absolutely fascinating. Gosh, you've covered so much there. And I'm going to say this to you now, actually, on this recording. We need to do a Q&A. I need to persuade you to have the confidence, which I doubt will be a problem, listening to you both, to do a live Q&A, a live stream with a Q&A. Give people advance notice, because you two really know your stuff. I mean, it can sound crass, but your passion just exudes out of you. Your knowledge does. And I think we should do a live Q&A. So put you on the spot. Right. Well, we'll organise that then. That's the Passions Live Q&A on dogs, on doggies. Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to finish it there, because I know I could go on for a lot longer.
Me too.
I know. It's great. I love it. But this is what I said to you at the start. Is like people's passions, they just come alive. Especially when sometimes people don't do it for a living, they're just passionate about it, and they'll talk about something to do with their work, and it's just kind of like, whatever. But then you get onto their passion, and suddenly it's like just a light bulb comes on, and they just become, and it's so true. But I get takeaways from all these, and I've certainly got, and when I've got more time, and perhaps another time, I will tell you I've got a doggy story in a similar kind of situation that I had with my wife ended up getting a dog, and against my wishes, and the rest of the story will come another day.
And the rest of the history.
But we should have known you then. That's all I can say on that. So thanks very much for joining me today, Julie and Alfie. Very appreciate your time. Absolutely mega, absolutely lovely. And we'll hopefully see you again on Passions Live next time. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, just before we go, how do people get hold of you?
So we've got a website called www.dollyandfriendsdogtraining.com. Dolly is our little Jack Russell. She taught us everything you need to know about dog training, because she is the most driving, dominant dog we've ever met. Being a little Jack, can take the world on.
4.5 kilograms.
She was in charge of our German Shepherds when she was a puppy. She can control them with a look. So Dolly and Friends Dog Training is our website, and it's the same for our Instagram. So it'll be at Dolly and Friends Dog Training. But all of our social media is linked to that website. So if you go straight to that website, we've got pages on our history, or our story really, which is a bit of what we've covered today, is just the way we've got into this, our dogs, and the experience we gained from owning those different types of dogs. And then just your basic information, such as prices, services we offer, things like that, and our reviews as well.
And how to contact us.
Yeah, so all of that contact will be through our email that's on the website, or the form that you can fill out, that you can fill out on the website.
And then, and in terms of the work that you do you have to be relatively local to where you are? Or could somebody I'm in Manchester, could somebody get some help from you in Manchester?
We generally cover Kent, is our main area.
But we're willing to travel further.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We try and accommodate. We'll meet that halfway, but we can certainly, or we can provide Zoom, which is very, very helpful, particularly with separation anxiety. We can do Zoom consultations if you're in Scotland, for instance. I have done that before. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got this picture in my mind now of this Jack Russell sat on a seat on Zoom, and you talking to the Jack Russell like Dr. Dolittle.
No, you listen to your owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about your anxiety, Jack.
Our job would be so much easier if we could.
Yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely,
What's going on in that little head of yours?
Well, with the way that artificial intelligence is taking over the world, anything could happen. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Undoubtedly.
right. Thanks very much, folks. Really appreciate it. Take
Thank
care,
you.
and thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and
Very
we'll see
much
you
so.
again sometime in the future for another Passions Project episode. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining me. Bye for now.
See you
Bye-bye.
later.